Hey guys, it's Kelsey here, your best friend on the homestead from roughandtumblefarmhouse.com. As you can see, we just had a super successful duck hatch here at the farm, and I'm going to tell you all about how I did it. So there are a couple different methods for hatching ducks. Oh my gosh, you want to go back in there? I'll put you back in there, hold on. So there are a couple different methods for hatching duck eggs. There's sort of a wet method and a dry method, and it's a little more complicated to hatch ducks than it is to hatch chicks. And we had a really great success with our kind of go around here hatching out ducks. So I'm going to tell you exactly what we used and how we did it to have a really great hatch rate. So first things first, you need to get your hatching eggs for your ducks. Where you get them from really depends. I just had a friend who had some ducks, and so I reached out to her and got them. They charge $10 a dozen for their duck eggs, and she's a friend, so I got a couple dozen and then gave some also to another friend who wanted to hatch some as well. So you can expect to spend anywhere between $10 a dozen up to 30 plus a dozen. It depends on what kind of duck eggs they are, if they're a rare or breed, if they're harder to come by, all that kind of stuff. As far as where to get them, you can buy them online. I don't know, buying online to me always seems a little bit risky because there's a lot of time isn't a guarantee about the hatchability for them. They cost a lot for shipping. A lot can happen on their way to you. So that's not my favorite choice for duck eggs. I prefer to get them from somebody local. So just hit up like Facebook Marketplace. There's different, homesteading groups and things like that that might have some good information, or some people who have duck eggs available. You can post on Craigslist or just kind of ask around, even at like a farmer's market. You might find someone who has ducks and is willing to sell you some hatching eggs. The eggs you want to use for hatching, they need to be fertile. So I think these things go without saying, but sometimes it's good to reiterate. There needs to be a male duck and a female duck in order for the eggs that the females are laying to be fertile. So make sure there are drakes, there are males around from wherever you're getting your ducks. You want eggs that are less than a week old. They should not have frozen at all. It's fine if they're kind of out and about. Ducks are kind of tend to be more sporadic layers as opposed to like right in a nest like chickens do. So it's not an issue if the duck eggs are kind of dirty versus chicken eggs. You want really clean ones. Duck eggs are also used to being around kind of like wet conditions, and them being a little bit kind of like mucky or muddy really isn't that big of a deal. I have one in the incubator. You might be able to see here that it was really dirty and I put it in there. I just kind of brushed off some of the dirt, but you don't want to wash them or anything like that. So just put them in the incubator. Even if they're kind of dirty looking, it should be just fine. One thing that's a good idea to do is to check the eggs over. Just do a quick candle, so shine a bright light through the bottom of them so you can see if there are any cracks at all before you select those ones to be your hatching eggs. Next up is your incubator. So whatever you want to use for your incubator, it's going to vary depending on how many eggs you want to hatch out, your budget, everything like that. I personally like the Mana Pro Nurture Right 360. It's got a really long name. I did a whole review video about this incubator and why I picked it and why I liked it. But just kind of the quick version of that is I like that it's small so it can fit on your countertop easy. I like that you can see all the eggs really nicely. The biggest selling point for me in this incubator is the fact that it is made of plastic, not styrofoam. I hatched tons of eggs out with a 4-H program I used to run. And the foam things were always such a nightmare to clean at the end of the year, versus this plastic one is actually very simple. Sorry, the ducks are all coming over. It's very simple to clean. When it comes to where you're going to set up your incubator, we usually do ours on the kitchen counter, kind of tucked away where people aren't going to bonk it, or you're not going to be shoving or having to shuffle it around. So somewhere in kind of a counter space in your kitchen is good, so you can keep an eye on it because you're going to want to watch the humidity. I found with the duck eggs more than with chicken eggs, the humidity was something I had to babysit a lot more. Whereas the chicken eggs, I might go a couple days before I had to add some more water. The duck eggs, it was pretty much every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, I was having to add water to it. I don't know if that's because they just kind of like suck it up a little bit more or what. Sorry, guys. I wonder if I can move the camera so you can see these ducks right now. Hold on. They're all just laying there like looking at me as I was talking. It was so cute. Okay, anyway, sorry. Back to incubator placement. So you don't want to put your incubator somewhere like right now I'm downstairs, you can see, in kind of like our gross, our bathroom is just sort of more kind of like rough cut. It's kind of more of a mudroom down here. And so you don't want to put it out of the way where you're not going to see it, pay attention to it every day. Another thing I highly recommend, I talked about this in my chicken egg incubating video, is I really recommend putting some sort of like color electrical tape or something on the plug-in so that way it doesn't get unplugged. You notice it easily. So if someone goes to like plug in their coffee or whatever, you aren't going to unplug the incubator on accident. You also want to have your incubator that is not in a window, because that can really change the temperature. If you get like a lot of sunlight coming in, it can get in there and spike the temperature. Also, if you have like a drafty window, it can get chillier in there. So somewhere right by a window, or even like a heat vent even sometimes, isn't the best option. Okay, so let's say you have picked out your incubator. You're going to get it set up in your location you have picked out as well. First thing you want to do is kind of get it going for like a test run. You're going sorry, if I move the camera, you're not, it's going to make the move, but they're literally just all standing there looking at me. It is so funny. Anyway, now I've lost track of my thoughts. Thanks, ducks. Now I'm losing track of my thoughts. Okay, incubator test run. So plug it into the location. Go ahead and add water to it as well. Depending on what sort of incubator you have, it's going to have different places you add water to the water reservoir. This one, you add water. There's a little kind of cup on the outside. There's an A and a B. You leave a cap over the B. Then you put the water into the A. Also, your incubator, just follow the instructions for however you're supposed to set it up, because some are going to have, you know, like the big styrofoam ones, they have kind of a plug that goes in up until the last few days. So make sure the plug is in place, all that kind of stuff. So this is where it really depends on your incubator. Just follow how they recommend having it all set up. Regardless of what incubator you have, you're going to let it run for 24 hours just to get everything stabilized. So your temperature should be at about 99.5, and your humidity for this first part of the incubation process should be right at about 55%. Now, the thing I like about the Nurture Right incubator is it does have a humidity gauge on it. So it'll tell you that. If your incubator does not come with one, in the past, I have just kind of, you know, poured water in and made sure it keeps water in and let it go. But you can get online, just on Amazon, somewhere for just a couple bucks, a little humidity gauge that you can pop right in there. I do not recommend if your incubator, sorry, it's tough to say, if your incubator has a humidity gauge and you've had successful hatches in the past, or it's brand new, do not buy a separate one and put it in there, because chances are they're going to be slightly off from each other and you're going to make yourself crazy trying to decide which one is correct and not. Just stick with the gauge that's already on there. And again, if yours does not have it for whatever reason, then buy one of the little ones that you can stick in there to keep an eye on humidity, because I think humidity does make a big difference in how successful your hatch is going to be. So I would definitely monitor that if your incubator doesn't already have that built in. Okay, so it's been running for 24 hours, temperature stable at 99.5, humidity stable at right around 55, and now we're gonna put our eggs in. Now with chicken eggs, you can really more easily see where kind of the point of it is. Duck eggs have a really different shape, and it's kind of hard to see where sort of the pointy versus the round end. In any case, you're going to set them in so the pointy side is like upwards, or kind of, you know, if you're looking at it this way, away from you, pointy head's going away from you. If you have a turner like I have in mine, you want the pointy end to be in towards the middle of the circle. Or if you have one that is where the turners are kind of flat trays like this and the eggs sit in them upright, you want the pointy end down. My 3-year-old did my nails for me, by the way. Sorry, I was just noticing that. Just noticing my wild nails for this video. Anyway, pointy end down. So once you have your eggs in there, close up your incubator and then keep an eye on it and let it run for about a week. Now, once you have hit the 1 week mark, you can wait a little bit longer if you want with duck eggs, but what you want to do then is check for development. And so this is called candling. And again, it's nice this incubator has a candler built right into it. So we are checking basically for signs of life or eggs that aren't working out. It's important we do this along the way, because if you leave bad eggs in there, they will start to rot, and the gases and things of the decomposition will build up, especially as you're kind of like low key cooking them, and they can explode, and then you have like contaminated, gross, yucky stuff all over your eggs and in your incubator. So that's no good. So what you're looking for is the signs of life is kind of, as veins is sort of the main thing you're looking for. It's blood vessels that are going all around the egg. And those are pretty clear, pretty easy to see here this first week. Eggs that really have absolutely nothing going on, if they just light up like a Christmas tree, you don't see any little lines forming in there at all, that one's probably a dud, so you can go ahead and get rid of that. I recommend putting them very carefully into your garbage so that it's not like a big gross, like they pop and things start to smell. So discard it carefully. And then we're going to put everybody back into the incubator. Now this is where there's 2 different methods for incubating your duck eggs. You can do a dry method where it's just like chicken eggs and you just check them again in a few more days, keep humidity the way it's supposed to be, and that's it. The way I did this hatch, and it's what I would recommend for you to do as well, is the wet method. So where you decide to start doing this wet part of the method. It depends on you. I saw some resources said day 10, some said day 6. So I went in the middle and started on day 8. What we're going to do is take the top off the incubator and let the eggs sit out at room temperature for about 15 minutes. This is going to lower the temperature of the eggs, which is what we want to happen. And then we are going to just spritz them down a little bit with water. Nothing crazy. We're not trying to soak them. I have, for my daughters, I have one of those continuous mist, kind of like hair water sprayers, squirt bottles. And so I would just kind of squeeze it to charge it up and then go one kind of over the top, and that was it. So I let mine sit for 15 minutes. They can go up to a half hour. I just said 15 minutes so I wouldn't forget about them. And a half hour seemed risky. We've got very mischievous cats. I didn't want them just sitting out in the open for too long. So I did 15 minutes. If you forget here and there, it's not a big deal. I think there was 1 or 2 days where I was either gone or I just straight up forgot. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think. But so you're going to do that once a day, every single day. If your incubator does not have a turner in it, so it's turning the eggs, because the eggs have to be moved around a little. Otherwise, if they're not, the chick will develop and they're kind of lopsided and oftentimes will stop developing altogether. So you will have to turn them by hand, going in there and turning them. But I really recommend, if you can, sorry, the ducks. You guys are being too noisy in there. You're being too noisy. I really recommend having a turner because I don't like the idea of having to open the incubator several times a day. Your eggs should be turned at least 3 times a day if you're doing it by hand. And every time you're doing that, you're opening it up. The eggs are cooling, the humidity is changing. So I really recommend having a turner. If you don't have a turner that's doing it for you, you want to put a little mark on the eggs, like an X on one side and O on the other, so you can remember easily what if you have turned the eggs or not, or just some, it can be a smiley face, doesn't matter, but some kind of mark on the eggs. So it's easier for you to tell, yes, I rotated this one, yes, I rotated that one. So you will have to turn them if you don't have a turner. I did find that these duck eggs actually fit just fine in the chicken slots. If your incubator is much smaller, then you might need to invest in sort of like, they might have like a duck adaptation turner that you'll have to get for it. Okay, so we are turning our eggs 3 times a day, or our turner is doing it for us. Once a day we are taking the lid off, letting it come to room temperature and spritzing it. We're keeping that temp at 99.5. We're keeping that humidity at right around 55. One thing I noticed is my humidity tended to dip at night quite a bit. I mean, it would drop down as far as like 30. So I would sometimes spike the humidity just a tiny little bit before bed to try and keep it from dipping so much. But so keep that in mind, as usually mornings is when you're going to need to add water to your incubator. At least that was the case here in my climate, and the humidity of my particular home, and the temperature outside and inside and all that stuff is all going to affect your humidity. You'll want to repeat the candling process again at around day, I don't know, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. And then when we get to the last part, just before what's called lockdown, you can do one more candling and remove any eggs that aren't viable. So I couldn't help myself. I was always really wanting to candle them. So during the cooling process, a lot of times I'd sneak a peek and candle a couple of them every night just for fun. The last days of incubation, it takes 28 days for duck eggs to incubate. So days 26, 27, and 28 are lockdown. So on, say, morning of day 26 of incubation, you can rotate your eggs one more time if you want to. If you have a turner, remove the egg turner because we don't want it moving the eggs anymore. The last few days, the chicks are getting ready to hatch, so they're orienting themselves in their eggs and everything. So we don't want to be shuffling them around anymore. The turner's out, do your last turn, do your last spritz, and then put the cover on top of your incubator. And then also it's important to open up any sort of air valves or vents that there are on your incubator. Mine just has a little door that you open, which is really nice. You also now are going to be upping the humidity. So now we want that humidity to be about 75%. Temperature stays the same, humidity goes up. So again, this is day 26, 27, and 28. On day 28, that is hatch day, you can expect to wait a lot. They take much, much longer to hatch than chicks do. And just try and remain calm, because it can take anywhere from, on average, from a pip, 12 to 48 hours from their first pip. So pip is when they poke their very first hole. Little ducks when they're first born. I think all these girls and boys already, theirs is kind of just fallen off or kind of worn off. They have a little teeny kind of pokey thing on the tip of their nose that they use to bust through their shell. And so they'll just kind of poke one little hole through, and then it might be 2 days. You might be 30 days before that duckling actually hatches. So please do not panic. Just let them do their thing. Do not open the incubator unless you absolutely have to. Just let them hatch out and complete their process. If you open the incubator, you're sucking out humidity and it can cause shrink wrapping of the ducks inside. Now my ducks kind of hatched in 2 heats, so to speak. We had on day 28, we had 1 duckling hatch just before bed. So it was like the end of day 28. 1 hatched out and she was still very wet. And then in the morning when we came out, we had, I think, 7 ducklings total had hatched. A whole bunch came out in the night. So about midday on day 29, when most of those ducklings were nice and fluffy, I pulled all of the fluffy ducks out. I just put them in a cardboard box. I think I have it down here somewhere. Just like a small cardboard box that had a lid, and I put a piece of paper towel on the bottom so they wouldn't slip. And then I brought them down to their brooder, which I already had set up ready to go with food, water, all that kind of stuff, which that's a whole other topic, which if you want to find out how we are brooding our ducks, comment below and I can make a video about that as well. When I did that, I did it as quickly as possible. I don't think I have any video of it because my 2 little girls were there wanting to help, and I just wanted to get the ducks out and the cover back on, everything quickly. Working quickly and carefully is important. So I take those ducklings out, put them in their little box. I also then kind of pull out, if I can really quickly, any of their broken shells from the eggs that they hatched out of. I just scoop those out just to keep things clean and have more room for the remaining ducks that are in there. After those ones came out, I think it was that was day 29. Day 30, kind of mid-morning, that second heat was ready, and then it was late that night of day 30. So it wasn't until day 31. Was it day 31? No, 28, 29, 30. So maybe in the morning of day 31 that the very last 2 hatched and I brought them out. So you can go in there a little bit to take them out kind of in one fell swoop, but really try and limit how much you are opening that incubator. So that way it increases the chance of the other ducklings that are going to hatch. It increases their chances of successfully hatching. Also, don't need to worry about them in the incubator. They absorb the egg yolk when they are coming out during their hatching process, and that gives them plenty of nutrition to keep them alive and well for 24 up to even 48 hours in the incubator. So it's really not a big rush to take them out. And do not take them out just as a solo duck. You want to bring them out when you have at least 1 or 2 other ducks to come with them for company and also to kind of keep warm as well. How did we do for our hatch rate? We had a really great success rate. We had a 70% hatch rate, which is great. So we started out with, we started out with 21 eggs, but then 1 randomly had a hole in it. So we put 20 eggs in the incubator, and then we had 5 that I had to pull along the way that just stopped developing. And then so we had 15 eggs that went into lockdown. And of those 15, 14 successfully hatched. So that's a pretty good success rate. Ducks tend to have a lower success rate than chicks do, oftentimes just because they are a little bit trickier. But so you can expect, around 50% is a pretty good hatch rate, like 50 to 60% is average, just sort of for your home duck hatcher. The big hatcheries that have sort of specialized equipment and stuff, they see higher hatch rates around like 90%. But so having a 70% hatch rate was actually really great for us and our ducks. And we absolutely have our hands full. We have more ducklings than we know what to do with. I think I forgot to mention that the ducklings that we hatch, these are silver apple yards, and they are just a really beautiful duck. And so I'm going to be following along on their journey all the way from incubation to brooding, and then oh my gosh, they're starting to jump up on stuff. They're getting wily. Ducks grow a lot faster than chicks as well. Just a quick note there. But so I will be following along these ducks here on our channel. So if you want to see kind of their process, how we brooded them, they're going to be free ranged on our farm, living in their own kind of room in our chicken coop. If you're interested in that, make sure you follow along here on the channel. And I'm going to go ahead, so subscribe obviously is what I'm telling you, and hit that bell notification so you will always be alerted when there's a new video coming out. And I'm going to link for you here some other videos. I'll link that incubator video about where I'm reviewing the incubator. And then I will also link just some other kind of things if you're interested in hatching chicks or anything like that. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope we will see you here next week for more from our Rough and Tumble farmhouse.